Diocese 175th. The Diocese 175th anniversary. Pin. Well, good evening, everyone. It is 6:30 on the dot, so let's be punctual. The sooner we can start, the sooner we get to go home, right? And there's a lot of information to present tonight, so we're going to do a very succinct job in making sure that you get all the information of what's happening here at St. Mary's. But how about we begin with a prayer this evening? As today is the day for the sanctity and protection of all life, and particularly protection for the unborn, I'm going to use the prayer from the opening of Mass today. So in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us pray. O God, who adorn creation with splendor and beauty, and fashion human lives in your image and likeness, awaken in every heart reverence for the work of your hands, and renew among your people a readiness to nurture and sustain your precious gift of human life. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, thanks for being here tonight and for paying attention. For those who are online, thank you for joining us as we hear about the state of the parish. We'll be presenting things on the screen. If you're watching online, when we go to the PowerPoint, it should show up online for you as well. It'll be a little, hopefully you'll be able to understand everything that I'm explaining as I'm pointing things out. I don't know if, as I was reflecting on this, my final state of the parish with you, do you remember the one 3 years ago? And where the 3 times ago, what it was, and how it was a much different demeanor, and how I remember how nervous I was, I don't know about Father Luke, about standing up here and trying to explain and help us understand what was going on with St. Mary's. And I just want to, before we start tonight, acknowledge the progress we've made in the 2 years and 3 months that we've been here. And we presented that first state of the parish pretty early on when we first arrived. And there was a lot of questions. And thank you for your perseverance, and thank you for your dedication and your belief in us and what we could accomplish. And we did it together. And tonight we're going to reflect on that and all that's going on with the state of the parish here at St. Mary's. So as we know, the goals for the state of the parish tonight are a couple. We want to present the financial report from this past year. We do this annually each year. We're going to present the spiritual report from the past year as well. We're going to clarify the overall financial picture of St. Mary's. We're going to identify some trends that are taking place at St. Mary's right now that we want everyone to be aware of. We're going to make you aware of your parish and what's taking place. We're going to highlight some good news. There's a lot of good news that we want to share with you. And we're also going to highlight some challenges for us. And then I'm going to end with presenting, well, it's kind of mixed in throughout the whole thing, talking about the road to renewal and what's going to be next as we move forward as St. Mary's Parish. So let's jump right in. Let's begin by looking at who's new to St. Mary's this year. Some staff has changed this year, and so just so that we're aware, in the past year, we've hired Keith Call. He is our business manager for the parish. Keith has been with us since, end of August. And so as Keith has been with us, we welcome him to the team. He's been doing a great job. Olga Les is our Russian language teacher in the school. And so the kids learn Russian, and they're enjoying it, actually, quite a bit. Luke Gazelski and Heidi Sutt are youth ministers who are working tonight. We have a breakthrough tonight, and so our young people are having a session with our youth ministers tonight. Susan Rafe is our school secretary. Linda Lucenti, our Montessori aide. New teachers this year, Julia Baker, Harrison Reed, and Colleen Wojtaszek. And then we have our substitute teachers that joined us this year, Mary Brown, Jean Delamarie, Donna Delano, Judith Hayes, and Karen Lux. So those are some of the new faces around St. Mary's within this last year. When we look at new parishioners, how has St. Mary's been growing? So you'll see in 2018, the year Father Yetta retired, we had 94 new parishioners. As we go to this past year, in 2022, we welcomed 117 new families to St. Mary's. And so that's continued growth. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, a little bit down from the previous year, but nothing that's too shocking. You have the ebbs and flows. When we look at the spiritual report, and we look at some of the things about our sacraments, you'll notice baptisms from 58 to 68, so we grew in baptisms this past year. First reconciliation, we're down just a little bit, but pretty much steady. First Eucharist, we're up just a little bit. You'll see this in graph form in a few minutes as well. At 92, we had 81 confirmations this past year, 12 marriages, and 71 funerals. So the parish is very healthy and alive spiritually, some great things going on, as you are well aware of. And as I even said to Father Luke the one day, and I think Deacon Rick will concur, some weekends we're like, when don't we have a baptism? That's a great thing to be talking about. When don't we have baptisms? And it's great to see at Mass and after Masses. If you want to look at our school enrollment, I know these numbers look a little small, so I'll read them off to you. In this past year, our school enrollment this year, the bottom number is our K-8 enrollment, and our top number is enrollment with Montessori. K-8 enrollment this year is 160 students, and with our Montessori, it's 192. You'll see that's down from last year, so that's a trend that we're watching. And one of the things that's very important for us is that our school board has an active advancement committee now that's been working very, very much on making sure we're recruiting. You saw the speakers at Masses this weekend if you were here, and you'll notice the new posters and all that kind of stuff, advertising our open house this coming weekend. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a school, you can refer them to our open house and help promote that. As you look at our faith formation enrollment this past year, we're down a little bit more from the previous year. We're at 516 students enrolled in our faith formation program from 525 last year. It should not be a shock to the trends as far as enrollment in young people. When you look at the demographics, certainly we have growth in the area, but across the region, young people are continuing to decline. So I don't think these numbers should be all that shocking to everyone. So when you look at all those things that we were talking about, how does that compare to previous years and where we're going? You can see the graphing starts at 2016 up through 2022. So you can see where we peaked, dropped. This is where Father Luke and I arrived. We're not taking all the credit here. I'm just pointing it out. It's in 2020, okay? But we have continued to grow in a positive direction over the last number of years. When you look at reconciliations, you can see where we were in 2016 at 115, and this year we're at 81. First Eucharist, we're at 116 in 2016. We're at 92 in 2022. So you can see where these trends are moving. You'll notice how many of them are moving in a positive direction, so please take note of that. Confirmations, you can see we're pretty steady for a while, dropped off after the pandemic, and are up a little bit to 81 this past year. How many are we confirming this year? 20. Yeah. So we're confirming 73 this coming fall. Spring, that's what I meant, spring. Marriages, kind of a little bit all over the place. In 29, we had 29 in 2016, and in 2022 we're at 12. And I counted this coming year, as of the other day, there were 12 scheduled for this coming year as well. And there's, what? And there's a couple more coming, so that's a good thing. So, marriages. I'm going to throw in here, just so that we're aware of, our family of parishes trends, that our family of parishes includes Our Lady of Peace, St. Teresa, Nativity, and St. Mary's. So while we looked at our information, one of the things as part of the Road to Renewal, and I'll be inserting some of this information as we go, is that I'm presenting to the family of parishes and to any of the leadership that want to know about it, what's happening in the family of parishes as far as trends are concerned. How do we compare when it comes to some of these things? So for example, we have all this information. Now, I know again it's small, but at the bottom there's 4 different bar graphs here. And as you can see, Our Lady of Peace is one color, St. Teresa's in Akron is orange, the gray is Nativity, and then the yellow is St. Mary in Swormville. All of us totaled together is the line on top. So some of the things that I just want to point out to you is, number one, when we look in 2012, in our family of parishes, because this is how we're going to start talking now a little bit more, is what is it when we're all working together? That we have roughly, back in 2012, 6,500 registered households back in 2012. In 2021, that number is pretty much the same, 6,500 registered households. So when we say registered, I want us to take a look at, now we go to practicing, and notice where that number starts. Instead of 6,500, we're starting at just over 5,000 in 2012, and in 2021, that number is around 4,700. So we went from registered to practicing, and I bet you can guess the next one, contributing. So I'm not just registered at my parish, I'm practicing, now I actually contribute in some way, shape, or form to the good of my parish. In 2012, that was less than 5,000 contributing households, around maybe 4,800. And in 2021, that number is really like 3,100 contributing households for all 4 parishes altogether. So you see that trend. Now we go from contributing to how many actually show up on the weekend. So average weekly attendance totals. Now, when we look at these are individuals now, they're no longer families, okay? So when we go to individuals, in 2012, in our 4 parishes on a weekend, we would have roughly 8,000 people attending Mass. In 2021, the last information we have, that number is under 5,000 for our family of parishes, the 4 of us combined. So you can see the trending and where that's going, and obviously you can tell where the pandemic hit. But you're also noticing that trend is not improving. People have not returned from pandemic in many instances, and that's where we need you to help identify them and invite them back. So there's much work to continue to do for all of us. The number before COVID hit, so 2017, right here you're at 7,000. Oh, so yeah. So 2019 is when COVID hit, you're right there, it's 5,000, right there. Is that line right here. Okay? So the blue is Our Lady of Peace, the orange is St. Teresa's, the gray is Nativity, and the yellow is St. Mary's. Okay? So I'm not going to get into the details here, but what I want you to see, these are the baptism trends. We looked at our trends for St. Mary's. These are the trends for the entire family. How many baptisms have been taking place in all of our parishes? We go from back in 2012, 180 baptisms, down to in 2021, just over 120. When you look at confirmation trends, you can see the trend and where we're going from around 275 back in 2012 to in 2021 under 200 confirmations in our family parishes. When we look at our marriage trends as a family of parishes, we got in 2012 roughly 67 weddings, and then in 2021 we're just over 30 for our 4 parishes. When we look at funerals and death in 2012, we had 160 funerals for our family parishes, and in 2021 we're at about 150. So pretty consistent there. When we look at numbers in religious education, our faith formation, first thing to note, in 2015 and 16, it was changed on who reported the numbers, and it wasn't mandatory, so it's not that nobody was educated those 2 years, okay? So you can kind of connect the dots here and see where the trend is going. But in 2012, we had over 2,500 students in faith formation. In 2021, that number is under 1,500. So that's loss of 1,000 kids in our faith formation programs. It's an important trend to pay attention to. When we look at our assets, we'll look at finances now after sacraments for the family. You'll notice that our asset trend rises, which is a good thing. In 2012, we started at roughly $3 million, and in 2021, the asset trend for the entire family is a little over $7 million. Our liabilities trend for the family of parishes. Liabilities back in 2012, a little over $1 million. And as we went through, that liabilities trend in 2021 is just under $2 million. You'll notice St. Mary's is one of the higher ones in the liabilities. And you'll just also remember that part of this was that back assessment that was owed when we arrived, and we took care of that last year. So that is not reflected in this number here because this is 2021 data. It wouldn't show up until 2022 that was taken care of. That's not a liability, though. Yeah. So when we look at our regular receipts would simply be really collections in the family of parishes. How are collections doing? In 2012, regular receipts within the family of parishes is really just closer to 3.5 million, and in 2021, that number's at 3 million. And you can see where we're trending on that orange line. When we look at total receipts, that includes not just collections, but also fundraising efforts, bequests, donations, extraordinary receipts, things like that. You'll look at, in 2012, that number is just over 4 million, and in 2021, it's just shy of $5 million for all 4 parishes. When we look at expenditures, you'll notice that where we start in 2012 is just around 3.75 million in expenditures, and that has actually dropped, and in 2021, that number is just under 3 million. So there have been cuts in expenditures across all the parishes within our family as well. So then when you see net operating profit loss trends, you'll see where we're going here. And in 2021, this number looks really high. And this is the effect of PPP money and the ERC tax credits. So that money that was given to us by the government was given to anyone who kept employees retained throughout the pandemic. We benefited from that, so it made all parishes look much better in 2021. Also, it was a very good investment year, that your investments did well last year. However, if you know this year, they're saying that this number, because there is no PPP money for this past year, that we're looking at around a 20-25% loss in investment income over this past year, based on some of the rough data the diocese has looked at already. So just so you know that. So what I want to show you now is, I know we're looking at a lot of trends and graphs and stuff, but you remember probably a little over a year ago, there was the Catholic Leadership Institute survey that was done in our parishes. And Joe and Karen Karaszewski are our renewal reps, and they were part of making sure that that survey took place within our parish. And we pushed that survey very hard. And one of the things that that survey tells us is a couple of very important facts. Number one, who's attending, their age, how often they attend, and what they're contributing. In many different ways, not just monetarily. But we're going to look at monetary tonight. So one of the things that all this trend data tells us and helps us understand is, number one, where have we been in our history? But now that CLI data helps us to look at where are we going in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And my reason for showing you all of this is to help you understand why this road to renewal is so important, why, and this is to convince me too, why I need to go to the renewal full time, because when you see some of these numbers, it's going to be a little bit shocking on what we're predicting for the next 5, 10, and 15 years. So when you look at average Sunday attendance, this is self-reporting. Every October, Donna would have the ushers count, and in those counts, those are given to the diocese, how many people attend Mass on the weekend in each parish. So at Our Lady of Peace, they have around 450 attend a weekend. St. Teresa's around 250, Nativity around 1,100, and St. Mary's around 1,000 each weekend. That's self-reporting. Number of parishioners that responded to the survey, these are actual surveys that are turned back in. I'm very proud we are the highest number of surveys returned at 659 in that grouping. Not as good of turnout at Our Lady of Peace, only 90, 111 at Teresa of Avila's, and Nativities, only 237. So we had a great response rate. So thank you for taking this survey seriously, because it gives us more accurate information. So what we've done as part of the renewal is looking at all of this information, and it tells us we're going to look at the two oldest age brackets. And this is only factual data, the data that was given to us. So it's not, I'll explain that a little bit further as we go. The annual contributions of the two oldest age brackets. The two oldest age brackets are from 66 to 75 and 75 and older. What do those age brackets contribute to their parishes and its mission? So when you look at that, this gives us a base. They self-reported, those people in those age brackets report that for our entire family parishes, they provide roughly $907,000 to our annual budget. At St. Mary's, we're around $496,000, roughly $500,000. Those two age brackets contribute to what we do here at St. Mary's. Okay? So what we did then is we looked at, so I'm not going to get too detailed in this, but I just want to show this isn't even our parish, it's just to give you an example of the layout. So this is All Saints in Buffalo. What we were able to calculate based on Sunday attendance, number that responded, what was their percentage over 75, and then what were the levels of contribution that they contributed towards the mission of the church, of the parish. This number over here, this full factored impact, is essentially taking, and I'll talk about it in a second, we only had 68 respond in All Saints out of 120 attending. What if everyone actually attended? What if we extrapolated that survey result to 100%? We can kind of predict what it would look like if everyone and all of these percentages remain the same. So I'm going to refer to that in a few minutes. We're going to look at the actual data and then full factored impact in a few minutes. Okay, and then this will get explained a little bit further down. So one of the things, so this is for the whole family of parishes. Okay, so in 5 years, we can expect to lose 49 people over the age of 75, 86 over the age of 66 to 75, between those two ages. And you can see for 10, 15 years, for a grand total in 15 years, total loss of roughly 536 people that will pass based on death rates and those that are attending right now. Should be pretty straightforward. What we can also see is who responded to the survey. So while we know that the two oldest age brackets, when we look at how many responded, what's their age of response? So at Our Lady of Peace, in the two oldest age brackets, 60% of the respondents were in that oldest age bracket. Only 6% were between 18 and 45. The one good thing about our entire family is all 4 parishes had respondents in the 18 to 45 category. That's good, because there are parishes within our diocese that did not have 18. Their youngest response was 36 or 45 years old, which tells us that's an aging population, that parish is aging. So when we look at our percentages, you can see the youngest that responded, 6% at Our Lady of Peace, 12% at Teresa's, 11% Nativity, 11% St. Mary's. What this creates for us is a ratio. So that what the ratio shows us is for every one young person advancing in their faith, how many are we losing? So at Our Lady of Peace, for every one young person advancing in faith, they're losing 7. For St. Teresa's, for every one young person, they're losing 5. At Nativity, for every one, they're losing 5. And at St. Mary's, for every one, we're losing 2.4. So we have to know these numbers. Okay, so when we think, oh, we've got time, we're doubling our loss every year. pretty much. For those that are continuing to move forward, 2.4 are leaving because of death. All right? For the family then, for every one advancing in faith, we lose 4.6 as the average. Would not. Not unless they're registered in the parish itself. And just like we have nursing homes where we have people registered as part of the parish family that are in our nursing facilities around here. So it should be the same either way. So let's look at contributions then. If we're looking at the 2022 base on what we just said, the survey data told us people contribute. For our family parishes in 2022, they contribute roughly $907,000 for our 4 parishes. With the death rate and the number that we're going to lose based on contributions in 2027, that base will drop to $680,000. That's a 25% decline. When you look at 2032, that base will drop to $340,000. That's a 62.5% decline. And when you look at 2037, 15 years, that base is down to $233,000, a 74% decline. That's with just the facts of what's there. This does not count any fostering of donations, does not consider new people joining the church, does not consider people as they age and maybe they contribute more. This is just based on what's the data that was collected in the survey. So I want to make sure that that's very clear. When you look at these percentages, and we look at, this is again survey respondents only, you'll remember what I said, the full factored impact. What if everybody that attends on the weekend, what if those statistics were the same across the board? Then, if that's the case, our 2022 base goes to $3 million. If we look at everybody that attended, if they had responded, that drops to $2 million in 2027, to $1 million in 2032, and in 2037, this drops to $600,000. You see these percentages, 34, 69, and 80% loss over the next 15 years. Now, I'm not here to be doom and gloom, but what I'm here to do is bring us into the reality of why do we need the renewal? Because all of this information that I'm showing you is without any impact of the renewal moving forward. This is why we need renewal. We need to bring awareness to what's going on. We can't just accept the status quo. So we've all got some work to do in making sure that we're moving forward. So when you look at what are we saying as part of the renewal, is that we can't waste another day without actively using family ties of grandparents and parents to hand down their faith. Over the next 5 years, 5. And remember, this survey data is already a year old, so let's go to 4. In the next 4 years, within our country, is the greatest transfer of faith and wealth in our country. Because a generation of people are passing who were the hardest working, most wealthy people that have worked so hard throughout their lives. And the 2 places that they're donating to the most, faith-based organizations and education. All the data tells us this. So we need to be aware of that. But the other thing is that we've got to be aware that once the older generation departs, we no longer have that direct connection to the seemingly strongest, most impactful family tie for the church to connect with younger children. These children become separate islands and much harder to connect with. What does that mean? It means that when Grandma says, Mass this weekend's for Grandpa, we're all going to church, most of them will come to church with you. When Grandma's no longer there to do that, we've lost their ability to connect with that family because they're 90% likely not coming to church. The older generation is the last connection that we have to these young people and families. So what are we doing to grab them while they still have that connection? That's going to be an important thing that we have to look at as the renewal and as St. Mary's. We have to be honest with ourselves that we've got to work on this. So, As part of that, our family of parishes, this is why we have to work together, is responsible for creatively attracting this younger generation to survive. We have to develop and provide resources that help the older generations to facilitate conversations to actively pass on their faith. What's the keepsake that you're giving that next generation to keep them interested in their faith life? Now, while I said this is not all doom and gloom, I was at a conference a couple of months ago. It was called For Alpha. It's an evangelization program. You'll hear more about that in the coming months. But in that evangelization program, they shared some statistics with us. I went to this Alpha Youth workshop, and they were sharing that our young people today, many people will dismiss young people. But what they have found is that young people want to talk about their faith. And they want people to be comfortable with one another in talking about their faith. That no matter if they're Muslim, Christian, evangelical, Jewish, no matter their denomination, religious belief, whatever, they want everyone to feel comfortable sharing what their faith belief is. What's interesting is that if an adult has a faith conversation with a young person, they are 60% more likely to go to Mass just by having a faith conversation with them. And what's even more interesting is by having that faith conversation, they are 50% more likely to share that conversation with a friend and invite them to tag along. So, as Father Luke will share with you in a little bit, why are those faith sharing groups so important? Because we need to know how to talk about our faith in a non-confrontational way with all age groups, with the younger generation especially. How do we encourage that dialogue? And that's the trend of the church currently. Those big group gatherings and parish retreats are good for the older generations, but small faith-sharing groups are much more productive when it comes to the younger generations. So how are we fostering those? And we have to think about that as well as a parish community. So how does this affect what we do as a family? So I'm going to talk about later what's called a family action plan. And what that family action plan is, it's essentially a strategic plan for our family of parishes. The goal of the renewal in coming together as a family of parishes is to create a strategic plan for the next 5 years. What are we doing this year, next year, 3 years, and 5 years? And what do we have as attainable goals? And then it's my job as the vicar for renewal to make sure that we're working towards those attainable goals. This is not something that gets put on a shelf and forgotten about. I need to see the measurable things that are being attained within each family of parishes. And if it's not being attained, what are we doing wrong? Or how do we assist in that process? We have to look at what efforts are we making to evangelize. I mentioned very briefly the Alpha program. It's a great evangelization tool that Alpha has committed to the Diocese of Buffalo. They will commit all the resources to us, free of charge to the diocese for this year. Parishes are going to start to hear about that, and it's a great way to invite people into faith-sharing groups. You'll hear more about that down the road. Very non-confrontational. We have to be honest and look at cutting expenses. What are we doing? Knowing the numbers now for the next 5, 10, and 15 years, we have to be realistic. We can't operate the way we did. So what are we doing? And we have to make sure our staffing is meeting the needs of the renewal objectives. This is going to be important, is that when we go to cutting expenses, what's the first thing parishes cut? Youth ministry. 90% of the time. And what does that do? Shoots us in the foot. Because now you're not programming for the young people to take the place of those who are aging. So we have to be aware of that. We have to look at adult faith formation. How are we helping that middle generation who was poorly catechized? How are we helping them to grow in their faith so that they can have something to pass on to the next generation? That needs to be a key part of the renewal as well. So that's a lot right there. I'm going to pause for 5 seconds and ask if you have any questions on what I just presented on the family. So I know we're kind of jumping, but I feel like this was the flow that was going to be best for the presentation tonight. So I started with the parish numbers, spiritual. Then we went to the family report because I wanted to give you all of that, which included spiritual and financial. And we're going to jump next back to the parish only to look at, now that we know what to expect, we can see how we're doing in comparison to what I just presented. So any questions on what I just presented so far? Yeah. You can track how many are watching online. And so, right, so back when the pandemic was much more active, I guess you would say, our online attendance was much higher. It varies each weekend. The attendance online is not huge, but it's still a resource and evangelization tool available for those that can't be here for one reason or another. So, but I don't think it's impacting it nearly as much as people think it is. So I would say, on a weekend there might be 120 views, 150 for our weekend masses. Yeah.
How do you track contributions to those people?
Of the online people? I don't know that answer. I'm sure if somebody could take the time, because you don't know who's actually watching online unless they comment. It just says that somebody's watching. It doesn't tell you a name or anything. So, okay? Yeah, Dan. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, is there a way, and I should do that for online too, I'm sorry. The question was, is there a way to track who's watching online and what they actually contribute? And I said there's not, because it doesn't tell us who's actually, what their name is watching online, so that we won't be able to track that, okay? Any other brief questions before I move on? Yeah?
The donations, when we become a complete family, donations from St. Mary's, do they stay at St. Mary's, or is it going to be?
So the question is as we start looking to this family of parishes model, do donations to St. Mary's stay to St. Mary's, or is it a whole family pot? And it is not. Every parish is its own parish. Finances are the responsibility of each individual parish. Now, there will be some shared expenses. So, for example, as happens already, you don't pay my full salary here. The diocese pays the majority of my salary because I work for the renewal. I'm sure many of you didn't even know that. Is that 70% of my salary is paid by the Diocese of Buffalo. You only pay for 30%, okay? So that's why you only get 30% of me. I look skinnier when I'm here versus when I'm kidding, okay? But so the same thing will be true when we go to the full family model. The pastor, the priest salaries will be split 4 ways, okay? And it'll be dependent. It's not necessarily equal. It's dependent upon percentage of income, percentage of expenses. There's a number of formulas that we use to calculate that. Okay? Yeah.
So it indicates to me that you need some pretty significant right size. Like you're down 80%, you don't need 4 churches.
Hmm?
And maybe you're going to gain some people, so maybe you need 2. So I'm thinking that's where we end up going.
So the comment was that with the statistics that were presented, this will be a lot of talk about right-sizing our churches. That might be part of the conversation as we move forward. What we're trying to make sure we don't do is what was done in some previous things in the diocese of just simply top-down. This is staying open, this is closing. We're not doing that with the renewal. The whole point in the conversation of the family coming together, just like when you have a family crisis or things, you've got to have those tough conversations around the kitchen table. What are we going to do? We got to make the best decision for the whole family, so how are we going to do that? So there might be down the road conversations that are like, we can no longer afford 4 facilities. When that conversation happens, we're going to be here to help you have that conversation and how to move forward with that, but it needs to be started in the family of parishes itself, particularly with this family. When you're looking at other families that I have to deal with in the diocese, that might be different because there are some instances in families to where there's major concerns that need to be addressed right away. Then that's my job to go in and have that conversation. Okay? All right. Oh yeah, go ahead. Some parishes are, so the question is are all of our populations demographics the same in all of our parishes? In our family of parishes, no, even within our 4 parishes, the demographics are different. When you look at the respondents and St. Mary's, we are a younger population versus Our Lady of Peace, and St. Teresa's are a little bit older of a population. Nativity seems to be on track with St. Mary's. We seem to be comparable, and then Our Lady of Peace and St. Teresa seem to be comparable as far as age for our parishes. Okay? All right. I'm going to move on. So when we look at our own finances for the parish, where are we at in comparison to everything? So when you look at our parish receipts total this past year, we're a little over $2 million. Our parish expenses over this past year were around $1.4 million, giving us a parish surplus of around $680,000. And remember, a lot of that was our PPP money and our ERC tax credits, and thanks to many of you, our contribution levels did increase again, so we are doing much better than we were when we first arrived back in 2020. When we look at faith formation, receipts is roughly $56,000, faith formation expenses is roughly $167,000. The parish subsidizes our faith formation program by roughly $110,000. That's budgeted. We expect that. Based on what we charge and what we offer, we have a very high quality program. That's a real bang for our buck, I promise you. When we look at our school receipts total, roughly $1.1 million. School expenses total, roughly 1.4. Giving up the subsidy from the parish to the school this past year was $206,000 roughly that the parish commits to the school for the functioning of the school. When you look at the Montessori program, the Montessori receipts total around $203,000. The Montessori expenses comes to around $91,000. The Montessori subsidy then, so the remainder of this balance gets put to the school budget. Now, I got myself in trouble last year. So one of the things I want to point out about Montessori and the way we calculate expenses, the expenses are simply the straight expenses for the program. That does not include any of the overhead. For example, all of the building maintenance, all of the utilities, all of the insurances, all of that comes under the general school. It does not get separated out for the Montessori program. So while this looks like, oh, the Montessori is really helping our school, it does. I'm not denying that. But we have to also make sure we realize the school's the one bearing the brunt of all the fixed expenses. Okay? So I just want to make sure I spell that out this year. So we're going to get that next. So when you look at total subsidies for Catholic education at St. Mary's, the parish pays $206,000 for our 192 students K-8. That's, no, 192 is actually including Montessori. My apologies. The Montessori program contributes another $111,000. We have the faith formation that we contribute $110,000. So our total subsidy on what it costs the parish for all education is only $205,000, because essentially these two are a wash, pretty much. So that's what we contribute to education of all of our young people here at St. Mary's, $205,000. So good news. Get your mic on.
I have the fun part.
I get to say the first one, though. I want you to see that. St. Mary's remains debt-free. We are completely debt-free. That's an important piece. Now you get the rest of it.
So as Father Brian was mentioning, as we kind of move back into the parish level of things here, how are we responding to some of the challenges that we are facing as a parish since we arrived? What are we doing now? What are the good things that are happening here at St. Mary's that we keep talking about? And in no particular order, 175th anniversary celebration is coming up.
Oh, Father Luke, I think since you're going to be the consistent one here, you just got to get the feeling. Help me out here. You got to get the feeling. Oh. I want you to state that first one again.
St. Mary's remains debt-free.
Isn't that a good feeling?
It's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. I think the best news of all, even before, I mean, we mentioned all these particular things, but you used the prayer today, we're holding the missal, we talk about the gospel as the good news. I mean, here we are gathered in the church around the altar. That's the ultimate good news, is that we have Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit working in our favor, okay? And let's never forget that. And then these are all signs of that grace at work, and then how we are building up the kingdom of God. So we've been doing that for 175 years, come next year, here at St. Mary's. A lot of history here that we're trying to cherish and build up to culminate in great celebrations next year. Some things that are planned, we're looking at going to Philadelphia, sponsoring a pilgrimage there. Reason being, that's where our founder, St. John Newman, was bishop and ultimately interred. And so there's a couple of activities around that, but you can mark your calendars. That'll be June 28th and the 30th through the 30th of 2024. So that's just one thing. We'll have the bishop here for Mass. Some of the things that we've been doing, you've participated in, like the faith sharing groups, maybe many of you. We have the discipleship activities, which we've been doing across the organizations to make us realize, how does St. Vincent de Paul play into our history here at St. Mary's? How does the Knights of Columbus? How does the Finance Council? How does Forever Young? How do all these different groups contribute to discipleship? How are we living out our mission here? So those are all activities that have kind of been sponsored, as it were, through the 175th to begin gathering memories, to begin understanding our discipleship, to begin sharing the faith, so that we can tell our story ultimately next year for our anniversary. And there's more things in that. I don't know if...
It comes up later, too.
Yeah, it comes up later as well. So Catholic Charities, I'm proud to report, of course, that we exceeded our goal for this year. It was a pretty lofty goal, and we had some participation, not as much as I would like, but to be able to help out the needs of those who are less fortunate. We're in a great position to do that, and we responded. Giving Tuesday this year with Campus Safety, Pastor's Choice, and Funding the Gap. Funding the Gap is what it costs to educate a student here at St. Mary's and what the tuition is. And so the difference is called the gap. Many realize that, okay, we need to keep the tuition down for families so that they can send their kids here. So thank you for contributing to that. Pastor's Choice, so Father Brian there, and he's got some plans before he heads out to sign a few checks before he leaves. And Campus Safety, we had the Erie County Sheriff come in and do an assessment, so we are up to date in many respects, but they also made some suggestions for the welfare and safety of our students, as well as our parishioners as a whole. Many people come here and use this facility, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of, especially in today's world. The addition of a dedicated religion teacher for grades 1 through 5, and I should add that we've been fostering a collaboration between our faith formation and our school. Here I'm looking over, and Tris and Christina are sitting next to each other. You can tell they like each other and work well together. 6th through 8th get some help from our faith formation department, where they're coming in every week. So they have special focused things there. Return of volunteers in school field trips. We're moving out of the pandemic and some of the scary stuff from COVID. It's still around, we know, but it's allowed us to return to quote-unquote normal. And so we're seeing a lot of life return to our campus, not just for mass attendance and for school activities, but organizations are coming back into life. We sound good now. You can hear us. It's the sound improvements that have been created. Just a couple things from like our faith formation and our youth side of things. We were talking about how important that is to foster that next generation. We've been re-looking at some of the programs there, in addition to all the wonderful things that faith formation is offering, to say, okay, what about the young adults, and how do we focus on engaging them? We have Spark that meets on Wednesday nights. We had a softball team over the summer. We didn't do too well. I tried playing myself, but we represented, and maybe next time I move to Waterboy, and we'll have a better chance at winning. But looking to do that again. Breakthrough, likewise, as Father alluded to, they're meeting over in the gymnasium this evening, And we had a great start over the summer where there was some 50 students that came and participated in that. It's tapered off a little bit with the school year and some of the other activities that are going on, but there's been a pretty faithful group to that, and we're excited in the direction that that's been moving and how that's been merging, different just social activities, Bible study, and good reflection and conversations on faith. And spiritual life is becoming more active again. Just again, a couple things. The Corpus Christi procession, we'll be doing that again this year. St. Teresa's is actually going to be hosting it. And so we hosted that last year, and we did that together with the family of parishes. Christ Renews is starting up again. We can put in a plug. That's the men's weekend. It's the last weekend of February. You're going to hear something about that this coming weekend as an advertisement for that. And then likewise, the women's is the second weekend of March. And then in-person faith formation is growing. You got the next slide. Yeah. There we are.
Okay, so communication. We've been working real hard still on our communication, making sure that you're aware of everything going on in the parish. First and foremost, parish council minutes are handed out in the narthex after the parish council meetings, trying to let you know everything that's happening on the council level. Finance information and what money is being spent on is in the bulletin each week. It's not every detail of every expense, but it gives you an idea of where your money is going and your contributions. You heard my voice this afternoon as well, so the robocalls continue. They will continue after I leave as well. Father Luke is committed to making sure that those continue so that we've had a lot of compliments and it lets people know what's happening during the week. So that's good.
I just want to share an anecdotal story. When we first arrived and we're trying to figure out the area and things, we're going out for dinner, and we went to this one restaurant and they go, "Oh, you guys are the robocall guys." So they didn't know us from church, but they did get our robocalls, right? So you talk about all the avenues of communication and how important that is, that if they're not here, they're not going to be getting the bulletin, but they are getting our phone calls, right? And so this is our chance to outreach to them and tell them, again, the good news, good news.
Flock Note continues to be an important tool for communication, and it connects the parish to news and information. Faith Formation has Flock Note. We have the parish Flock Note. School has the School Reach. And we're actually developing improvements to the website, both the parish and the school, which includes an app. So there'll be a parish app that's starting to be rolled out that connects us so that there's a little bit more easeability and feasibility for people to utilize different things that are going on at our parish. So when they want to know about how do I do a baptism, you'll be able to just click the app, Sacraments, and it'll give you all the information on what you need. You got to meet the younger generation where they're at, and for those that use it in the older generation, it's just a more convenient tool for you as well. So those improvements are being made. Some of the challenges that we have, I don't think I need to tell you, but expenses continue to rise. I'm sure you look at your own homes, you can see utility bills are continuing to go up. We put all those air purifiers in all the different areas, and they plug into the wall, and that's not free. So our utilities continue to climb. That's an important thing for us to realize. It's no secret that for many, the renewal and the family parishes concept is a challenge. It's a different way of thinking and how we're going to have to operate moving forward. And so I'm going to invite you, please, to be open to that process. You've got to remember how this church started. It did not start with buildings and all that. It was simply by an invitation by a person who said, "Come and follow me." And when they followed him, it was not to a building. They followed him to a home where they broke bread. They followed him to the sea. They followed him where the sick were. And so we have to think back and what is the church really about? And even as you look at our founder, St. John Neumann, is that, he was pastor in how many different places all at once. Even in our local area, you've got Peter and Paul in Williamsville, St. John the Baptist in Kenmore, you've got here, you've got out in St. Cecilia's in Sheldon, and I know there's more in between, where he was traveling from community to community. And the community took care of everything in the times that he was not there. We have been spoiled over the last century with a plethora of priests. For one reason or another, God has blessed us. That's a great thing. But in the same time, what that did is it took the laity out of the equation. Those who were caring for the community, when it was just John Newman, made sure everything was taken care of. As the priests increased, what did they do? They took care of everything. They were the ones that answered the door, answered the phone. They're the ones that took all the mass cards and all that, because there were so many of them in parishes. Now as priests decline, what do we find? The laity taking that role again. It's the ebb and flow of the church. This is not new. It's just different. We got to remember this. So I just remind you of that as we look to that challenge. Our increased offertory for support of parish operations, we just always have to be realistic about that as those expenses continue to climb. The one thing I challenge all parishioners to think about each year is, has your contribution been reflective of the changes that have been made in our own parish? And what you've seen in expenses rise, we have the same requirement here in our parishes. Have you been able to increase your contribution to help offset those increased expenses for us? And for those that have, and those who continue to contribute, we're extremely grateful and thankful. There's so many good things that are happening. Needed capital improvements. There was a comment over this past year that a lot has been done around campus. When Father Luke and I arrived, it was no secret, this first meeting that we had of the state of the parish was in significant debt. And that significant debt meant that there were things that needed to be done that were not getting done. Sidewalk improvements that you saw. There were tripping hazards, the stairs in the school that were actually crumbling. There were many things that had to be done. The roof leaked on the school. So through your generosity, through the Giving Tuesday campaigns, through our fundraisers, through the PPP loans and the ERC tax credits, we were able to reallocate funding that would have gone to salaries and to use it towards some of these capital projects. That was a real blessing for us. And so that's an important thing for us to realize, that there are still some improvements that need to be made over the next coming years. We had the founding of our Buildings and Grounds Committee. Father Luke was integral in helping to form that along with Don. And it was great. Dan Herberger is part of that. And we have a Buildings and Grounds Committee that went through every facility and looked at every aspect of our buildings to see what needs to be done and how do we plan for that over the next 5 to 10 years to make sure that our campus is cared for. We have a large campus, and it requires us to be good stewards. And so they did a great job at evaluating and prioritizing those projects.
And just to add on that, with the Finance Council, likewise, working in conjunction there. So.
Correct. Finance Council has been integral in making all of this possible as well, and making sure now that the Buildings and Grounds has placed it as a priority, how can we fund it and afford it? And how can we be responsible with that? When you look at some of those capital projects that I was mentioning, we have a new phone system on the campus, much needed, which includes an emergency alert system upgrade. I don't know if you've ever noticed, there's also, there's this little blue box right here by the Book of the Gospels. That's also an emergency panic button that we can hit from the altar if there's an emergency or something that goes on in this church during Mass. The presider's the one facing the doors. We can see what's happening, and that connects directly to emergency services. That connects to our school. So if something happens in the school, it comes over a sound system here that tells us if a funeral is going on and the school goes in lockdown, we don't want people leaving and getting in the way of something emergency that might be happening. So those improvements have been made. You saw the front steps of the school, sidewalk replacement in front of the chapel. There were chapel window repairs, new sound in both churches. The school had Chromebooks that needed to be replaced. Those were taken care of this past year. The soccer field turf replacement that took place in the fall. We'll start to see the fruit of that in the spring. HVAC unit in the gym was replaced as well. That needed to be done. And so those are all some great improvements over the last year. When we look at projects coming up and what we're looking at, increased security wall for the school entrance. As you enter the parish center, that's the main school entrance now, is that if people come in that second door, once they're let in, you have free access to the school. We need to make sure that if somebody were to gain entrance and not sign in at the office, we have a way to stop them from just going into our school building. So there's going to be a wall that's placed there. That was the number one thing that the Sheriff's Department acknowledged we needed to do to make sure our campus remains safe for all those who are participating in any events, including our school children, faith formation, things of that nature. So you will see that happening in the next couple of weeks, right, Don? Okay. Video monitors in the main church, while we're projecting here tonight, that has been paid for. Well, we have the money to pay for that, and is going to be taking place so that you will have the ability to have projection in church so that we can use them for homilies, presentations. When we did Dr. Shri, who was here, we have that ability and capability to have presentations in the church, much more professional style. So that is being taken care of as well. And the rectory needs a little bit of help on a few things when it comes to some flooring and a little bit of paint. Nothing too drastic, I promise you. Parish assessment update, just to let you know, while we did get current with that assessment last year, we did agree that we would pay the assessment moving forward. That assessment to the diocese for diocesan services is roughly $259,000, $260,000 a year. We are current on that assessment, just so that you're aware of that. One of the things that I want to also impart with you and leave with you on behalf of myself and Father Luke is that while we've done a lot as far as campus capital improvements, one of the things is that, it's great to have beautiful facilities, but if you don't have the programming to go with the facilities, what's the point of the facilities? I want to make sure that the future of St. Mary's is cared for just as much as we're caring about the buildings, and I mean educationally, when it comes to our school, our faith formation, and our adult education. Those are three extremely important pieces of the future of St. Mary's. So, unbeknownst to how this timing all worked out, a few weeks ago, I invited some of our top donors to a dinner. And I shared with them that we were going to create the St. Mary's Education Endowment Fund. And in creating that Education Endowment Fund, the point is to establish and to make sure that all forms of education at St. Mary's can be supported and funded in the future. That event that we had gave them an invitation to create the seed contributions to help us moving forward in that. And I am extremely proud and happy to report to you today that with that initial ask, what people have contributed so far, without going public yet, as we've got $68,200 that has been contributed to this education endowment. This will be opened to the parish, where we will ask the parish to also help try to reach that goal of $250,000. It would be a restricted fund only for the use of education here at St. Mary's moving forward. That cannot be touched by the bankruptcy, cannot be touched by the diocese. It's only for the education of our people here at St. Mary's in one way, shape, or form. And so I'm very excited that we got this established. It was kind of a bittersweet that the day of the event, I was not expecting this was the day I got the letter that I was leaving. So it looks kind of like odd timing, but I wanted to share with you that this is something that we are committed to, and Father Luke will be carrying on this tradition as we move forward in this. And so this is going to help support all of our education programs moving forward as well. And then just a couple other things I just want to share with St. Mary's. So what's next? While we looked at St. Mary's, we talked about the family of parishes. So what do we need to be worried about, and what do we need to start thinking about when it comes to the road to renewal? So you already know who our family of parishes are. We currently have 5 priests, okay? So that includes myself, Father Luke, Father Ron, Father Walter, and Father Art. Father Ryan, many people have asked me what's going on with Father Ryan. I talked with Father Ryan a couple of weeks ago. Father Ryan is doing well. Father Ryan will be returning to the diocese, but he will not be returning to St. Mary's. He will be coming back to say his goodbyes when he comes back, but he will be going somewhere else as part of his ministry. And so we're going to continue to pray for, support, and encourage him. So when I give you, say, 5 priests, those are the 5 that I was referring to that did not include Father Ryan. So I just want to be clear about that. This family of parishes is set to move to 4 priests. When we look at the vocation crisis and we look at number of priests that are serving, we have to look at the entirety of the diocese. And what we have to realize is there are parishes. I talked to a priest today who in his parish will have scheduled communion services for 2 weekends in a row because he is going somewhere else to cover, and there's no one to go there. So he's covering somewhere else because there's a number of reasons he has to go over here. This is happening on a regular basis in our diocese now. We have been blessed and have not experienced that. There are weekends that we have covered in numerous places. When Father Ryan was here, you knew somebody was going somewhere every weekend to help out. Then you knew I was in North Buffalo for a while, and it was Father Luke and Father Ryan, and you know that we've been stretched. We have not felt the real effect of that, but it's coming. And so that's why priests need to be redistributed. And when we're honestly looking at Mass attendance and what we hold, do we need everything that we have offered in all of our parishes? I'm not just talking about St. Mary's. We've just gotten comfortable in many instances that my church has a Mass at my time, but are we using our priests the most effectively? I can tell you, saying Mass on a weekend requires every ounce of energy that you have. And that when you're doing it right and praying and you are fully engaged, it's exhausting. And what you have to realize is that we're saying that every priest should only be saying 3 Masses on a weekend. 3. So that they're quality Masses that are prayerful and that we care for the life of the priest too. We could go out and say 5 to 7 Masses a weekend, and I've done it. But what's that going to do to my longevity? If I die of a heart attack in 2 years versus if I take care of myself and last 3 years, who knows, okay? It's God's time, not mine. I get all that. But we've got to start thinking strategically. So that's something I just want us to realize as we move forward. So we've got to figure some of this out. So one of the things as part of this is that how are we encouraging vocations? You know, when we start thinking about this, I was mentioning to Father Luke, you know, this past Sunday, the Spirit told me to mention something, and I just kind of forgot about it at the end of Mass, is that our 6 o'clock Mass is a very unique Mass, and it has continued to grow over the last couple of months. And in that Mass, there's a lot of young people, young adults, but this past Sunday, you know, I would have thought with the Bills game and everything, that it would have been quite less attended. But there were about 75 people by the time Mass was over that were at Mass. But there were a lot of singles who were there, men and women. And there was just this overwhelming feeling and that, like, there are vocations here. I'm talking all kinds of vocations. And we just have to foster and encourage them. Because it's, you know, to priesthood, to religious life, to marriage, to the single life. There are vocations that all of us can help to foster. And so I think that's an important piece of what we're looking at going forward. So keep that in the back of your mind. Encourage. As part of the CLI data, it's interesting that when you look at how many people have encouraged someone from that data that I shared before, have encouraged someone to become a priest, religious, or to live out their vocation, less than 1%. Have even talked about a vocation with someone, less than 1%. So that means all of us can do better. So when it comes to the family of parishes, you saw in the bulletin last week that we're looking to form our pillar groups. The pillar groups are these 6 areas. This is what that family action plan will address, these 6 specific points. Liturgy, spiritual life, outreach and inreach. Inreach is really focusing on like bereavement ministry. How do we provide ministry to those within the parish? Outreach is how do we provide ministry to those outside of the parish? Forming disciples, which is faith formation and schools. Stewardship and administration. And stewardship is not just, don't think of it as money, think of it more as like volunteers. How do we foster stewardship within our family of parishes? So the pillar groups are going to be representatives from the family of parishes that work to accomplish tasks in these respective areas for the family action plan. And so they're going to get some directives on how they're meant to function and what their tasks are over the next number of months to help create that family action plan for our family that sets goals for the next 5 years for us moving forward. I encourage you, if you have not visited the website, roadtorenewal.org is where you find all the information on the renewal. There's a playbook. If you go to roadtorenewal.org under resources, there's the Road to Renewal playbook. The playbook spells out how this family of parishes is supposed to operate. Now, it'll be tweaked. It's not a hard and fast manual, but each family will look a little bit different because our demographics are different, the way our parishes operates, all a little bit different, so it'll be unique to each family. That's the great thing about the renewal, is that we craft this for each family of parishes. So I encourage you to look at that and to read it. So what's the plan from here? So what's the plan from here is that in the short term, as I transition to full-time renewal ministry, the plan better be that you're praying for me and I'm praying for you, number one. Number two, trust God, who's going to continue to lead us, and let the Holy Spirit lead, have faith in Jesus, and Father Luke is going to be leading us in the short-term future, okay? So it's an important piece to this. We're going to work together as a family of parishes, and the goal is to make each parish better, okay? We can become stronger by sharing, by doing things together. We're going to develop that family action plan I talked about for the next 1 to 5 years for our family with clear, attainable goals. And we're going to support the work of St. Mary's. So I encourage you to continue to be involved in what's taking place. This one's yours.
So I mentioned 175th anniversary before. Briefly, this is more just a touch point to just say, again, what are the things going forwards. The fruits of our planning already, as so many memories collected, identifying how discipleship has unfolded and the impact that it's making. And then hopefully next year, then we'll be able to say, this is the impact that Christ has had on my life and the life of our parish, and be able to share our story with the next generation and continue for the next 175 years plus. One of the things I neglected to mention the last time around was we're also going to be putting together like a commemoration booklet containing some of those memories, some of those pictures, some of that history. An update, maybe, we'll see, to the directory of sorts, which we haven't had in 10, 11 years. Putting some of that on social media. So we've been collecting a lot of content, and you're going to be seeing more of that as we go forward again to celebrate who we are and who we are going forwards.
Okay. So what can you do? Number one, make sure you continue to pray. As I mentioned before, please pray for the leadership as we move forward as a family of parishes. Pray for Father Luke, myself. We're praying for you. Evangelize, share your faith. We, all of us, have to be the ones who share our faith. And when we want to know why aren't young people coming to church, or why isn't this happening, we have to ask ourselves, what's our part in that equation? It's not just the priest's problem or just the diocese problem. It's all of our problems. So all of us have a piece in that. It's important to remember. And just remember, by sharing our faith with the next generation, it inspires them as well, as I mentioned earlier. Invite and welcome others to St. Mary's, and it begins by sharing your story. Why is this place important for you? And you've shared that story with Father Luke and I for 2 years and 3 months now. And it's been great, and we've gotten to know your story, and it's so inspiring to us. Share that story with others. Outreach to those that you haven't seen at St. Mary's. Invite people back, share with them the good news, encourage them, and let all know they are always welcome here. And then also pay attention to what's going on, what's taking place here at St. Mary's, so that you can share that good news. And so will you help accompany others to Jesus and St. Mary's to meet the needs of St. Mary's? We budget $26,500 a week as our budget to make sure that we are here for the future. Can you help us to make that goal every single week? That's our budgeted amount. We ask you to support our fundraisers. They are for specific projects at St. Mary's that need our attention now, whether they be budgetary or capital projects. People love to donate to things like when we did the bells. People love that. Nobody likes to pay the electric bill, okay? But we need both. at times. It's an important piece. It's the whole parish that we have to support. So please be attentive to that. So I just want to say thank you for listening. And what questions do you have of Father Luke or myself that we can help you with tonight? Anything? Go ahead, Barb. Yes, so we have, the question was is that I'm leaving and there's other priests in the diocese that are leaving to support renewal. So those are the vicars foreign. Our diocese is divided into vicariates, each geographical region to help with the administration and really accountability between the diocese and the local parish. We used to have 12. We're going down to 7 geographical vicariates, so we're reducing the number of vicariates so they're larger. Now, my renewal team, when you go to other dioceses that are going through the same thing, Detroit has gone through this, they had a staff of 35 that worked on their road to renewal. I have a staff of 4, which includes me, okay? And that's why being split between here and the renewal has been a challenge sometimes because some things are falling through the cracks. So what we've decided is that those 7 geographical vicariates, if we have a vicar, foreign, who we've had all along, we had 12, but they were pastors and parishes, we're making 7 of them permanent in their vicariate to help with the renewal. So they're my right arm in the geographic location that they are vicaring. Does that make sense? So they become a resource, number one, for the priests that are in that vicariate. They're to help bring them together, answer questions, to help their parishes. If one of them gets sick because we don't have coverage now, this vicar is dedicated to making sure that he's a resource for masses in that geography as well. So some people are saying that, how can you take 7 priests out? They're not out. They are fully functioning, helping, and they will be saying Mass every day, every week, except their days off, things like that, just like they are now, but in a different way.
I just want to jump in on that and how they can fill in, because for a while I was ministering down in the southern tier in Chautauqua County, and up here in Erie, it's very easy to say, well, I'll ask one of the retired priests to come in and help. There are 2 retired priests, and one whose health is not very good right now, besides, that live in Chautauqua County. They have nobody to reinforce if they themselves are sick or are out or whatever, in addition to being spread thin already. So I know it, I was there. And Father Todd's struggling, and he never had vacations and things like that. Why? Because there's no one to help. So these guys can help slot in. It's not like they're being taken out. They're reinforcing some of the holes besides.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Data on the long-term look for priests. Sure. So when it comes to, we've been projecting to the year 2030 is what I've been planning for the renewal. And when I started this job a year and a half ago, 2 years almost now, it was predicted that we would have 99 priests in the year 2030. Of those 99 priests, only 66 would be under the age of 70 in 2030. We're in 2023. For the family model to work, now this is part of my job, is that I need, by the end of 2023, 110 priests, 110, only 10 more than I predicted to have in 2030, to make everything work. I can tell you today, we had personnel board, I don't have 110 priests today to fill those slots. I have 103. Why? Because there's a number of priests that died that were not supposed to. There were a number of priests that retired because of medical reasons that were not supposed to. There are some priests who left that were not supposed to. There were some planned retirements. So those factors have sped that process up to really create a lot of stress for me at the moment. When it comes to ordinations, this year we have 1 who will be ordained for the Diocese of Buffalo. 1. The number of retirements that I just got in the last 2 weeks is 8. Okay? We are in that time period where we had those very large ordination classes, and they're starting to retire now because we're moving into this family model. We have to understand that there's higher expectations of what a pastor will be able to do. So they're retiring and functioning as retired priests within a family. So we still depend upon the ministry of priests, of our retired clergy, to get us through. But they don't want to be the pastors. And that's understandable. They want to enjoy the fun stuff, not the administration stuff. And that would have been the case for many, throughout the years. So that's why we're saying pray for vocations and support. When you have a retired priest, anytime there's a retired priest, thank them for their ministry and for being willing to still minister. So as I will be leaving, we already have several retired priests who are going to be coming and helping at St. Mary's, so we can continue as is for the short term. So we're trying to commit to keeping the Mass schedule as is right now, outside of losing the 5:30 on Saturday. We're doing our best to make that possible until we get into the family model and we can go through the pillars and work through it that way. So thank the retired priests when you see them. And please, if you hear somebody complain about them for some reason, ask what was the last vocation that they provided for the church. Then they can complain, okay? Are there a chance for missionaries from other countries? There's always a chance that there are priests that would come into our diocese. So we have a number of Indian priests, we have a number of Nigerian priests, we have a number of Polish priests that minister within our diocese already. Actually, when you look at the number of priests per Catholics that are serving, we think we're in a horrible situation. But you have areas in which it's one priest in South America, one priest for 10,000 Catholics. The average in Western New York is one priest for 750 people. And we want to bring, and we have those foreign countries saying, stop stealing our priests, because we think we have a need. They really are the ones that have the need. We've gotten spoiled, like I mentioned, with that higher number of vocations over the past number, those 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. There was a question over here, yeah. Yeah, so will that endowment fund, that education endowment fund, be invested in any way? Yes. So I can share with you that over the past year, and I did not put that on here, thank you for this reminder, the Finance Committee has worked very hard to create 2 investments already. Number 1, our cemetery account. We took money from our cemetery account, put it in investment accounts so that it earns money. It's our perpetual care fund for the cemetery. Great things so that our cemetery is cared for the future. We are doing an expansion of the cemetery so we have more upright graves available. That you'll start to see happen in the spring, and that will not be taken out of that investment account. We have the savings to do that. And Sue does a great job caring for our cemetery. She does wonderful, along with Deacon Rick and Dan. And then, of course, Bob is the one who takes care of all the work at the cemetery. It's a great team, and we've got a great cemetery in place. The other investment account that we're creating is one for, of course, the buildings. That has been created in the really recent couple months ago, in which we're getting money into that for our buildings and capital projects for the future. I'm saying I want that third one for the education, so that is being created as we bring that in. Okay? What other questions do you have?
A couple from online. I'm going to give this one to you just to take a look and see if you want to handle it versus me, but I'll take this one. For how long do we have a diocesan commitment for Father Luke to remain with us? So we know that Father Brian is leaving. It's not official yet in that I don't have a letter from the bishop, but everything points to, I was told that I will be the temporary administrator in the interim here, so I'll be leading us going forwards. There's still dynamics in, it's not just St. Mary's that we're replacing here, a pastor. We are looking at the dynamics of our family of parishes. And so there's a lot of considerations that need to go into play. I made it known to the personnel board and the powers that be that I think St. Mary's deserves some stability, and I also made my intention to stay here known. And it was well received, I believe. I can't say. I love being here, and I love the family as well. I can't say for any certainty how this is going to unfold, but that is what I can tell you. And he can echo that because he's on maybe more of those conversations than me, but anyways.
Yeah, Father Luke isn't going anywhere, so that's an important piece for you to understand. And he's part of the equation for the family moving forward. He is the temporary administrator of just St. Mary's in the short term. It is the goal of the Personnel Board and the renewal to try and get a pastor in here, and I'm trying to help spur that on sooner than later. I would love to see by March 1st, but you know, always my plans are not always realized the way that I would like them to be at times, because there's so many other factors at play. So it's important for us to realize. Over the years, would you say that moving to an online tithing model actually increased your tithing? Absolutely. The online giving has helped us out tremendously and creates a more stable offertory for us. So that has been a huge benefit. And then so could potentially you see an increase with envelopes for those present now. We invite people when they register, they can choose their method of giving, whether that be envelope or whether that be online or a commitment to parish life. Janice takes care of all of that, and when she talks with parishioners at length, and making sure that their needs are met with where they're at on their contributions and things like that. So even sending envelopes out to all registered parishioners, I don't think that would benefit us in the long run because it actually costs us a good amount of money to do that. And so there are envelopes always available at the entrances. If you've forgotten an envelope or forgotten yours, you can always pick those up at the entrances. So I hope that answers your question.
You can chime in if I'm mistaken here. Will we have another deacon assigned to our parish? Or will Deacon Paul be coming back? Will we share deacons with our family of parishes? So my understanding is that we will be sharing deacons amongst our family. So there's other deacons within our family then that we will be seeing. Deacons assigned to our family. I don't know who's in the ordination class coming up. There will be some movement around a little bit, but not as much for the deacons.
So we currently in our family parishes, if I'm not mistaken, we have 5 deacons that are in our family parishes. Deacon Rick is one of those 5. And it's important for us to realize that as the family moves forward, you know, even though Father Luke has promised to remain as part of this family, the clergy will rotate within the parishes within our family so that you get to know more than 1 or 2 priests. We'll be ministering all together. And so that's going to be an important piece for us to realize as we move forward. If you don't see Father Luke one weekend, it's not that he's on vacation. It's that he might be at the neighboring parish ministering there. Same with the deacons. We're asking that they work together in the formation of the whole family so we get to know all the congregations, we get to know everybody that we're ministering to, and for the best interest of the family.
I have no knowledge of Deacon Paul coming back at this time. That would be a personal decision on his part.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you know right now, at this time, are there more seminarians in training or deacons in training?
There's more deacons in training in the diocese at the moment than there are seminarians in training. I believe the seminarians, and I could be off, I think it's only 7 guys that are currently studying for the priesthood in our entire diocese. They're at St. Mary's in Baltimore, and that we got to remember that's spread out over 7 years. 7 guys over 7 years. Okay, so we've got some work to do. When it comes to the diaconate program, between the, it's a 4-year program for diaconate that they're actually studying for. And I don't know the number. I think it's around 25 that are studying. Don't quote me on that one, but it's more than we have studying for priests right now.
We talk about fostering vocations to the priesthood, but consider a vocation to the permanent diaconate as well.
Okay? Anything else? We do have a vicar for our area, so we're part of what's known as the Northern Erie Vicariate. Our vicar is Monsignor Zapfel. He is the vicar. He was the vicar of the past. He is still the vicar now moving forward as well. The vicars were all appointed, well, they were suggested by their brother priests. Then we went through and interviewed them to see if they would be a good fit for the work of the renewal and for the presbyterate that they would be associated with. And then the bishop appointed them. So they were just appointed, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We had a training for them as well. It was a 3-day training at Canisius at Loyola Hall, in which we're helping them to understand how their role is changing. And we've begun the trainings for the priests now, because ministering as a pastor in a family, and we call it a collaborative model, is much different than the old methodology of pastoring a single parish. A priest cannot do everything that a priest has done in the past. So there are many things that I or Father Luke do that are not priestly. So for example, locking the doors. You don't need a collar to lock the doors at night. And there are times when, other people could be doing some of the tasks, it's just a simple one, that we're currently responsible for. Now, why is that? We've just gotten used to it. Well, we need to change some of that, okay? This one's me. How many dioceses in the United States or percentage of the U.S. Church are moving to a renewal program? Is this widespread? Great question. We are not the only diocese going through this. The majority of our United States are going through this process. We at the Renewal contacted and reached out to every diocese in the United States. Deacon Greg Moran is part of the Renewal team. Chris Fletcher was part of that. How many did you call, Chris? You had 92? You had 40. So they reached out through volunteers to all the dioceses in the United States, and I think it's 11 or 114, one of those two numbers, we got 96 responses. That's a very good response rate. Of them, you have the majority, like 66 dioceses, that are going through a collaborative model of ministry. That's what we're talking about right now. And there are some that started this a number of years ago, 10 years ago or more. Their majority are really within the 5-year range, and there are some that are just starting out. So my colleague, Deacon Greg, last week was in Indianapolis talking with the diocese out there. They asked him to come in to facilitate some of the conversations with their clergy based on what we've learned from ours. And some of the same challenges that we're having, other dioceses have had as well. I also want you to know that there are success stories. There are success stories. We had the 6 pilot programs, and those 6 pilot families are moving forward. We learned a lot from them. There were things we learned not to do, and that we changed going forward. And there are things that we learned were great. So, for example, the Lockport family, while they don't have a pastor quite yet, and that's a whole other story that I won't get into, but they do have a central office now. They have 1 business manager, they have 1 bookkeeper, they have a unified bulletin. They actually worked with their local school district, the public school district, that created a logo for the family of parishes as a competition within the school. They did a lot of great things that have brought them together. North Buffalo is doing some of the same things. Our rural families are even further ahead. So it is working. There are challenges, but it is working. So we've got to think about that. Okay.
So this next one, I'm inviting Christina to speak on, since she's our Director of Faith Formation for the parish as a whole, and she might be able to explain some of our programs a little bit more fully.
Sure. So the spiritual needs of an 11-year-old are very different from those of an 18-year-old. Why are they now all together instead of separate youth ministries for younger kids and high school students? Go for it.
Okay. So we actually don't have 18-year-olds in with 11-year-olds, but we do have something for everybody. So the Breakthrough is a youth ministry group for those in grades 6 through 12. And then we have Spark, which is youth ministry for 18 and over. And we work very hard to make sure that the needs of our families are met, and we are very open to ideas and groups that want to come in and share.
I'll just mention that I was worried about the same thing, and my son
So for those online, they were just hearing a witness of a mom who has a child that's younger in with some of the older students, and they enjoy that because the older students help teach them and learn new things that they wouldn't have learned necessarily at their own age level. And so that, remember, we talked about intergenerational education is very important.
And that's what we originally had the middle school and high school, but recognizing that families have a middle school and a high school, and parents, instead of coming back and forth, would just bring their kids together, working as a community, learning and living and growing together as a community. So we put them together, and it's been successful. And actually, we've had more numbers of youth attending activities than ever before. So again, and we're always open to ideas and suggestions. We're here for the parish. So if anybody ever has some suggestions or ideas, please bring them to us, and we'll see what we can do to make it happen.
Thank you. Okay. Any last minutes? Otherwise, we have been at this for an hour and a little over an hour and a half, so I think we're good. I hope that you appreciate all of this information that's been shared with you. There will be a summary sheet of our financial report, year-end financial report, that gets placed in the bulletin in the next couple of weeks. So for those that might not have been here and want to know about a rough synopsis of our finances, that will be available in the coming weeks in our bulletin. Thank you for taking the time out tonight to come and to share your precious time with us and to know what's going on with our family as far as the parish of St. Mary's. It's not possible without you. And the number one thing that everything is all about is the person here. It's all about Jesus. Everything that we talked about tonight, we began with prayer, we're going to end with prayer. It's all about Jesus, and he's the one that makes it all possible. And he's challenging us in ways, and he's encouraging us to continue to grow and to have faith and to trust, and that's the most important piece in all of this. So I pray that our ministry continues to help lead you into that mystery of God's love, and that you're inspired to share that with the world. That's what it's all about. And I can share with you, Father Luke and I have talked, while I might be transitioning out as your pastor, you will still see me once in a while around here filling in and trying to make sure things are continuing to move forward. And so that's, you'll see me at the Christ Renews weekends, our Day of Mercy. We're still going to do that. I'll still have the late night shift. I don't know how I still get that shift, but Father Luke promised me that, the 3:30 to 9 a.m. or whatever that is, and I'll have the masses that day. So I'm still invested in St. Mary's. I want you to know that. And so why don't we pray together? Father Luke.
Given all the talk of our need for renewal today, I think it would be appropriate. I like to end with the Glory Be, but I think we all have in our pews the Road to Renewal cards. Let's pray for renewal for our parish, for our family, for our diocese, for our church. In every age, O God, you have called us to be your people, to be your church. In this time, we begin anew to discern the pathways that will lead us, your people, closer to you. Continually bless our journey as we proclaim your good news, celebrate your saving presence among us, serve others with charity and justice, and steward the world you have entrusted to our care. Send your Spirit to lead and guide our amazed journey as we commit ourselves to the renewal of our church. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Go in peace.
Thank you, everyone.